liberated by their religious experiences. I think possibly the human spirit is naturally inclined towards peace. Men and women should have access to equal opportunities in all aspects of life. As I work with faith communities, encouraging them to dialogue with each other, bringing them together, having seminars and workshops and training events, that kind of thing, for Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Baha'is.
Kia ora. Welcome to Baha'i on Air. My name is Heather Simpson. Today I have a special guest, Dr Maureen Sier, who has come from Scotland to the Pacific region. Welcome, Maureen. Thank you for coming to spend some time with us.
Thank you.
Maureen, I understand that you have just won a Fulbright Scholarship. Could you tell me about that?
Yes, I'm actually very excited about that. This is the first time that the Fulbright UK-US Scholarship Awards have gone to an interfaith project. And this was a scholarship that was offered to 13 different countries around the world. And eventually they've chosen a delegation of 10 individuals who will go to America for 4 months, and they'll work collaboratively on interfaith projects together. I think the first 3 weeks will be at Santa Barbara University, and we'll be exploring how to tackle some of the religious tensions in the world through collaborative interfaith work and interfaith dialogue. So I only found out yesterday, so I'm still a bit in awe of the fact that this has happened, but I'm very, very excited. I think it's important work.
This is a very significant achievement. Now, you've been working in interfaith matters for quite some time, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what work do you do in Scotland that relates to interfaith activities?
I work for the Scottish Interfaith Council, and I'm their Development and Education Officer. And I've been working as a Development and Education Officer since 2002. And it's great, exciting work, actually.
What are your responsibilities as the Development Officer?
Okay, this is going to sound really daunting, but of course I have a whole team of people behind, working with me and supporting. We have a 40-member council, a 9-member executive, and we have 4 members of staff now. Although when I first came into post, I was the first paid interfaith worker in Scotland ever, as far as I'm aware. This was a completely new post.
So you're a pioneer.
Well, the organisation is. And the work that I do is I work with faith communities, encouraging them to dialogue with each other, bringing them together, having seminars and workshops and training events, that kind of thing, for Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Baha'is, all the faiths of Scotland. We have a very multi-faith country. I also work with young people, with women, and do an interfaith conference, interfaith retreats for young people, seminars for women. I support the local interfaith groups of Scotland. There are 10 of those at the moment, 12 now, 12 interfaith groups scattered all over Scotland, from the urban areas of Glasgow and Edinburgh right up to Shetland Isles, in far north of Scotland. There are interfaith groups up there. Part of the role of the Interfaith Council is also to involve the minority faith communities particularly, but all faith communities, in government processes and civic processes, making sure they have a voice in the Scottish Executive and Scottish Parliament, making sure they know what the issues of the day are that might affect them and their faith communities. And we do faith awareness training. And in fact, it's all kinds of things. We have publications. A Guide to Faith Communities in Scotland was one, for example. Our young people put together a fabulous publication on how to be eco-friendly in your faith community. And they worked collaboratively, young people from all the faiths of Scotland, working on that together. And I could go on and on and on and ramble on, but I mean, it's exciting work. And what's really nice is there's a real commitment in Scotland to interfaith dialogue at all levels. The religious leaders support the work that we're doing, and we facilitate biannual, twice a year meetings of the religious leaders of Scotland. There's local groups, there's national organisation. It really is, very vibrant.
It sounds to me like an idea which is permeating all levels of society, and I'm wondering if interfaith activities are promoted through schools.
Yes, there's a wonderful movement called the Religious Education Movement in Scotland. I mean, we have really very, very good religious and moral education anyway in Scotland, from primary school right through to secondary school, right through to universities. Of course, you can do religious studies degrees, where young people from 5 onwards look at the different world religions and explore aspects of the different world religions. Right through to secondary school, they can take their higher degrees and such like in religious education. and the religious education movements there to support religious education in Scotland and RE teachers. It's called Religious and Moral Education. So there's a good understanding, I think, in Scotland about how important it is to recognise the diversity of faiths that there are in the world. And that's great, you know.
That's excellent to hear that the young people are being included, because as we know, as the twig is bent, so the tree will grow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful news. Tell me about your work with women in Scotland.
Well, we have an interfaith seminar for women every year, and of course I visit women in the faith communities and, you know, do presentations and workshops and various things there. The seminar last year was on women and war, how can we work together for peace, and that was very exciting. And we had a speaker from the Muslim community who's got an MBE, Farkhanda Chowdhury, and she'd done fantastic work in Iraq, working with the women in that sort of war zone. I think it's fair enough to say it's a war zone. And another woman who'd worked in Nepal, because, you know, Nepal's been fairly under siege, you know, previously, and there was a civil war there. And so that would be an example of one of our seminars. This year it was looking after one another, the safety and security of our faith communities, and the police, the national police, were launching their religion and belief handbook on how they're going to try to work more closely with the faith communities. So we did quite a bit there. And
I see.
Every year we have a different theme, and women from all over come. I think this year there was about 90 women from different faith communities, and 17 police officers and members of government and all sorts came to the seminar.
So I can see what a help it would be to the wider community to have women involved in such projects as keeping our communities safe, and also women working for peace.
Yes.
Do you find that women are naturally inclined towards peace?
I do, yes. I think there's, I think possibly the human spirit is naturally inclined towards peace. We just haven't quite worked out how to harness our natural inclinations towards peace, really. My background is I'm a member of the Bahá'í Faith, and that's very much at the forefront of Bahá'í thinking, that when eventually women have full equality with men, that there will, and it'll be in a time of an end to war. So I think there probably is quite a strong correlation between women and peace. I mean, I sense that. And certainly when I visit the women in the faith communities of Scotland, I can just say they're wonderful, really wonderful souls, and very, very dedicated to service to humanity.
The Baha'i Faith is well established throughout Scotland. It has communities as far north as the Shetland Isles and as far south as the Borders.
There's an analogy in the Baha'i writings, which I can't quote but I can paraphrase, in that men and women are likened to the wings of a bird. If a man or a woman is suppressed, then it's like the wing is damaged or broken and the bird cannot fly. But if men and women are equal, the wings have equal strength and the bird can continue with its flight.
Buddhism, hurt not others as you yourself would find hurtful. Judaism, we should love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Christianity, do unto others as ye would want them to do unto you. Islam, desire for your brother that which ye desire for yourself. Baha'i, blessed is he who prefers his brother before himself. In a world where religious differences is the cause of dissension and strife, isn't it nice to know there is a place where we can all be one?
Now tell me, what brings you to New Zealand?
Okay, well, a mixture of things actually bring me to New Zealand. The main thing is I have just been in Samoa and spent a few weeks there. I studied in Samoa for 5 years and taught at the National University there. I did my doctorate in Samoa. So I was in Samoa doing some follow-up postdoctoral work in Samoa. So I've been there and was coming through New Zealand on my way back home to Scotland, and actually met with the Auckland Interfaith group last night.
Tell me about your doctorate work in Samoa. What were you studying in Samoa?
Well, what first took me to Samoa was my master's thesis, which was a study of the Baha'is of Samoa and Tonga and their impact on the local culture. And it was doing that master's thesis that I first became aware of the incredible role that women play in religion in the Pacific. And it made me think, well, I wonder if this is the case really worldwide, but it certainly was true of Indigenous women and certainly was true of Samoan women. So from that master's thesis, I went on to do my PhD, which it's got a long, convoluted title as PhDs have, but it was basically Empowerment and Constraint, the Cultural Legacy of Indigenous and Colonial Religion and its Impact on Women in Samoa. So I looked at pre-Christian religion and what was still left of it, what was still practiced in Samoa and the role that women play in that. I looked at the mainline traditions, which I've called the historic mainline traditions, which were Methodist, Catholic and Congregationalist. And that was the middle section of the thesis. And the final section was looking at newer religions in Samoa, so the Latter-day Saints, the Baha'is, and the more charismatic Christian groups, looking at their structures and their impact, and all of this focusing on women. And one of the things that emerged, I suppose, in the process of doing a study, of looking at something, you end up developing a theory or a theoretical stance. And one of the things that I felt very strongly about was I'd read a lot of feminist literature, a lot of literature about women. And I was quite disturbed by the fact that most feminist literature is very negative about the role that religion has played in women's lives, either that it's misogynist or, that this kind of thing, the hierarchies are all male and etc. But my own experience of being a Baha'i, I actually found that religion was incredibly empowering to me and very, very liberating. And I knew as well from being in Samoa that the Samoan women are quite liberated by their religious experiences and play a key role in religion in Samoa. And so I thought there needed to be at least the beginning of a theory, or starting to look at a theory that would explore the positive aspects of religion in terms of women's advancement, as well as acknowledging that there have been structures that have been imposed on women in a religious context that are not necessarily empowering. So that's where the empowerment and constraint come in. It was looking at both aspects and sort of saying, well, where do we go from here?
Looking at the impact of religion on women's lives in Samoa, in a lot of the different religious communities in Samoa, Methodist, Congregationalist, Catholic, Baha'i, Mormon as well, the Latter-day Saints, and also charismatic Christians. So I looked at the role of women in all these different religious communities. Well, what I found was really fascinating, because I found that traditionally feminist theories of religion say that religion oppresses women. And I wanted to challenge that, because the first time I came to Samoa in 1995, I had felt that religion had really empowered women in Samoa, that they were very committed to their religion and that it gave them a lot of joy, a lot of meaning, a lot of purpose to their lives. And so I did find that there was a kind of a double-edged sword with religion, that some things were very empowering, but some of the structures, religious structures, could be constraining for women. Actually, in many ways, all religion, because it's about spirituality, offers empowerment for women. Obviously, as a Baha'i, I feel that we're really lucky in that the messenger of God for the Baha'is, Bahá'u'lláh, has actually said in Scripture quite categorically that men and women are equal in the eyes of God and always have been. But within Christianity and within all the traditions, spirituality is empowering for women.
My overall conclusion was that I felt that it was the structures that had evolved over centuries that had become, because it was a male-dominated society until quite recently, that constrained women, whereas the actual religious message and the attitude of service and things that women developed were incredibly empowering to women. So that religion did have this two-sided coin of structural constraint that needs to be explored, because structures are man-made, they're created by people. And man-made is probably true in a historic sense. Most structures are man-made. But that you can never take away from the power of religion in women's lives, and the charismatic founders of religious traditions, and the relationship they'll have with God through their religion and with their families and with their churches and with their society. All incredibly empowering stuff. So I found, that was my conclusion. Mostly the structures that were constraining, and the message itself was very empowering.
So it seems to be implied in what you've had to say that women are increasingly taking leadership roles in various aspects of their religious lives and their community lives. Is that something you can see in Samoa?
Yes, gradually. Yeah, definitely gradually. I mean, there are still areas that that Samoan women themselves are challenging. I mean, I think it's probably as someone, an outsider, I have to acknowledge I'm an outsider to Samoan society. I always try to work in partnership with Samoan women when we do papers or look at things together, because of course they understand their society and their constraints much, much better than I do. And so women have shared with me some of the things that have been constraining, but also some of the things that have been empowering. And I do sense that the 21st century will really and truly be a time when hopefully most of the world will have wakened up to the fact that men and women should have access to equal opportunities in all aspects of life. There's a Baha'i context, a Baha'i quote, if you like, that says that humanity is like two wings of a bird, and when both wings are fully developed, that the bird of humanity will fly. And if you have unequal development, one very developed wing and one that's not getting the opportunity to develop, of course, you can have a bit of lopsided or no flight at all. So we really do need to explore, that possibility that all women and men should have full opportunity to their full human development. What's going to bring out that potential that makes us truly human, that allows us to contribute to ourselves, to our families, to our society, to our lives, to the global community.
You've obviously made a number of visits to Samoa and you must have a lot of friends there.
Yes, I hope so. I certainly feel like I have a lot of friends there. It definitely feels like a coming home when I go back to Samoa. It is really an absolute joy and delight to go, to be in Samoa. And I don't just have female friends. I hope that there are friends, that are male and female, young and old. It's a very welcoming place, and particularly welcoming to visitors. I feel particularly moved by my recent visit to Samoa because of the passing of His Highness, the Malietoa. To have been there in Samoa at that time was a blessing, was deeply moving, and something that I will carry with me really for the rest of my life, that experience. You probably know that His Highness the Malietoa was a member of the Bahá'í Faith. And as that's my own faith as a Baha'i, there was deep significance, I think, for the Baha'i community in Samoa with his passing. But of course, for the whole of Pacific, for all of Samoa, and for everyone who's ever met and who knows the Malietoa will know just what an amazing person he was, and just what a profound impact his death will have on the Samoan people particularly.
Had you met him personally?
I did actually have the honour of meeting him twice. The first time was when I was doing my master's thesis on the Baha'is of Samoa and Tonga and their impact on the local culture. I was very, very lucky to have met him and interviewed him actually. One of the Baha'i counsellors in Samoa at that time, and Afamata Mole Chang, actually organised for me to go and to meet with him. So that was a huge privilege. And that as well was a deeply moving experience. And so his passing felt, it's significant anyway, of course, it's hugely significant, but personally, I felt the tragedy of his loss, although the celebration of his life is also something, he's such an amazing person and been honoured with being the head of state for Samoa for so many years.
His influence as head of state must have been very profound, and because of his personal beliefs that would have influenced the way in which he carried out his public duties as well, do you think?
Yes, one of the key teachings, if you like, of the Baha'i Faith is the oneness of humanity, and also that, all the religions are from, or the major religions of the world are from one source, from one God, and that they have taken on different shapes and forms depending on the culture and the time and the history that they appeared on earth, if you like. And so His Highness the Malietoa, although a Baha'i by personal belief, was really and truly the father of all religions in Samoa. You know, a Baha'i would have a very real and strong belief in the Lord Jesus Christ, for example. So he was, you know, quite comfortably, if you like, head of all the Christian churches, as well as being a Baha'i by his personal conviction. And I think that's really, really important and reflects one of the key principles of the Baha'i faith, I think.
The Malia Toa, being a member of the Baha'i Faith, must have also had a profound influence on the Baha'is in Samoa. Can you tell me, did he regularly attend Baha'i activities with the community?
When occasion allowed, he would attend services at the Baha'i temple. But of course he was quite elderly by the time I was in Samoa, and had many other, you know, important engagements to take part in. But his daughter, Princess Tuatosi Malia Toa, regularly attends Baha'i events and has served on both local and national Baha'i institutions in Samoa, and she's very, very much loved by the Baha'i community there.
All around the world, the Baha'i communities, and I noticed that there's always peace around where the Baha'is are. So I hope that one day that we will have this most great peace that Bahá'u'lláh promised us.
It's in an area called Tia Papata, which is outside of the main urban area of Apia, up a mountain, probably about 3/4 of the way up a hill mountain, you know, and surrounded by beautiful gardens, open to the public, and has services on a Sunday. So it really is, you know, it's quite an amazing place. And one of the things that is particularly nice, I think, about the Baha'i services held on the temple there on a Sunday, and it kind of harps back to, if you like, my whole interfaith context, is that we don't have preachers in the Baha'i faith. So a Baha'i service will simply be the choir singing and readings from the Baha'i scriptures, but also from other world religions. You know, that will be included in a Baha'i program on a Sunday. So I suppose there's a link for me between my belief system as a Baha'i, or, you know, my belief, my religion, and my work in interfaith, because there's a, you know, real merging in a way there.
So these services at the temple are open to anyone?
Absolutely open to anyone to go. Absolutely open to anyone.
I see.
Yeah.
And anyone who went along might hear scriptures from their own tradition being read or chanted in
there's
that
a good
spot.
chance that they would. Yes, there's a good chance.
Now tell me, how did you become a Baha'i?
Okay, now I'm going to give away my age here now, but I became a Baha'i 30 years ago when I was 17. So I was in my hometown Elgin, which is the northeast of Scotland. One of the nearby Baha'i communities, which was the Inverness Baha'i community, was holding an exhibition in the village hall. And I was out wandering on a Sunday afternoon with one of my friends, as 17-year-olds are wont to do, and I saw a sign up saying, you know, Baha'i exhibition. Now, not having ever heard of Baha'i before, I actually said to my friend, oh look, this must be those little Japanese plants, you know, the bonsai plants. Let's go and have a look at them. So really, you know, I had very little clue about, in fact, I'd never heard of the Baha'i faith at that time. You know, it was the 1970s, and there were certainly no Baha'is in my hometown at that time. But we went along to this little, this exhibition expecting to see Japanese plants, and found something completely different, which was a wonderful exhibition that explained the principles of the Baha'i faith. And on reading, you know, all the information on the exhibition, I was saying to my friend, who was called Caroline, this is great. I actually think this, you know, this is how I feel about life, you know, that the major world religions are from the same source, that there should be equality of, you know, between men and women, equality of opportunity, that education, that everyone should have access to education at a world level, you know, as realising human potential, elimination of extremes of wealth and poverty, you know, so many of the teachings, of course, the oneness of humanity, the whatever our background, you know, our colour, or creed, or culture, that we're all loved by God, and that we're the earth is one country in some ways, and, you know, mankind its citizens. So when I read all this, I thought, this actually ticks lots of boxes in my head. This is how I feel about life. I'd been a Sunday school teacher. You know, at this time I was a Sunday school teacher with a local Protestant church, although my family are not at all religious. They're good people, but they're not, you know, they don't adhere to any religious thing. But I had liked going to church and Sunday school and had become a Sunday school teacher. But I also went to yoga, and the teacher there was a Buddhist. And so I already had felt, you know, that these two religions offered something quite unique to me, and had enjoyed my participation in both things. And so when I saw this in the Baha'i teachings, here was a religion that wasn't saying, I'm the only one and we're the only way that's right, that we're saying that there's, you know, there's progress, you know, that religions progress in a way that they move according to times and according to history, but their spiritual core, their spiritual values are identical, really, are certainly very similar. So that excited me, and it was, I mean, probably now in my, you know, as a 47-year-old, it might have taken me a bit longer, and I'd have probably read a heap more books, although I think I'd still have come to the same conclusion. But 2 or 3 weeks later, I had decided that I really wanted to be a Baha'i and be part of the Baha'i community, and I've never regretted that that decision. I went from there off to live in the African bush actually for a while, and I'd met my husband Nick just before I went to Africa, and we wrote, you know, these wonderful romantic love letters back and forth to each other, as you do, and decided that we wanted to get married. And so I got married fairly young actually. I was 21 and had my first child at 22 and had 4 children by the time I was 27. So I was a mum, full-time mum, right through until my youngest son went to school.
Maureen, thank you so much for telling us this wonderful story. We wish you well in your further studies with the Fulbright Scholarship, and we look forward to your next visit to New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.